Good morning, everybody. It's, what is it, 4/18, 2021. 16. 1 plus 6 equals 7. Um, we talked yesterday a little bit about melanin, and I think um, brought to some type of consensus that while melanin is the source of our identity, it's the source of the identity of humanity. And we as a people are the ones who um, uh, allowed this truth to be brought to fore, but it was brought to the forefront, not for just our sake, but for the sake of all humanity. That is the role that we play as a people. It's sort of like a consciousness of humanity in a sense. But before we go on and Pastor takes your questions, are there any? And or it doesn't have to be about this. It can be about anything that's been on your minds. Because as always, the questions are what drive the discussion for the teachers. Any questions? Any concerns? Any thoughts? Any comments?
I have one question. Why this nation is going through these shooting again more? It seems like it's wrapping it up a whole lot faster now.
Thank you, Charles. I'll address part of that, and then I'll let any other teacher as well as someone who may be on the recording address that as well or comment about it. One of the things that we talked about was this very issue yesterday, and the issue of how we have so much compassion for the families of these people who are being affected, because these people are us. They are us. They are our neighbor. They are me and I am them. But one of the things we tried to put in perspective yesterday, Charles, was the fact that this has been happening all along. It's nothing new. It's just new now to us in that it's in our faces. We have the technology such that when it happens, we are right there, real time with it. Whereas before, there was not this technology. There was not this opportunity, if you will, to be able to capture this bestiality, this barbarity. There was no way to record it in history. And I'm not just talking about the killings, but the hangings, the lynchings, the firing of black towns and all of those kinds of things. The selling away of children into from their parents or from their mother to another plantation, not to know what happened to that child. The barbarity of just denigrating and just not treating people of color as humans, but as animals, lower than animals. So all of this has been happening all along. We're not able to keep up with it and account it and record it as much as we are now. So it's nothing new. One of the things that we talked about is the fact that regardless of what we see, regardless of what we hear, it doesn't take away from our compassion. We have to keep our focus. And all of this in the larger picture is speaking to bringing balance and harmony, not just to us, but to all mankind. Let's see who else has other comments regarding that. And then I'll get back to you, Charles, and see if it speaks to your question.
Okay.
Other comments?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Again, this is George. in Philly, and I just, want to say that, I believe that this is what, we, as teachers and those who are on the call, we put out in the macro is for things to be revealed, for things to be, in the light, where it's coming forth, that now, we're able to, have those to feel comfortable to be able to speak on us not only being Elohim, but what we can do to bring loving kindness, balance, and harmony, to the real time. And like you said, I don't think it's something that has not been out there. It's been out there before this appointed time, this appointed season. I believe that we put it out there in the macro, and so now we're seeing the dialogue and the things that need to be discussed and talked about in real time. Those are my thoughts. I'm done.
Thank you, George. Others? Charles, does that begin to address your question? And do you have any other comments regarding your question and follow-up?
Yes, that helped, and not only it helped, it seemed like it's gonna start wrapping up a whole lot faster now than it did in the beginning. It seemed like it's happening more quicker, more faster of them killing us.
May I comment on that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think that I know it's happening more rapidly than in the past, because since the 16th of March, we've had 47 mass shootings. It's not just the shooting of by policemen, it's shootings, period. And the reason things are ratchet up is because if it doesn't happen frequently, it becomes something that just passes in the news. The more rapidly it happens, the more frequent it happens, the more opportunity it is to bring an end to it, because people put more pressure on those who are in positions to change things. If it were happening once every 2 or 3 weeks, every 2 or 3 months, they wouldn't pay it any attention. But now, because it has happened so many times, when you think about it, in 30 days there has been 47. That's more than one per day. And that in itself makes a huge difference. And then when you consider it was over 142, I think it is, since January 1st, that's a record within itself. And it's not happening, it's not endemic to any particular part of the country. It's happening all over the country. So we think about how tragic it is, but at the same time, we realize that without it being brought to the forefront the way it is, and frequently as it is, nothing changes. Now, in regards to the police shootings, that's nothing new. That's been out there forever and a day. Same with the police shooting, as we said yesterday, is revamping what policing should look like, but also removing the qualified immunity that policemen have that protects them from being sued when they committed injustice towards someone. Would you mute your phone, please? There is something. Would you make sure your phones are muted, please? Yesterday, when we talked about identity, something else has come to my mind about that a few moments ago. When we talk about melanin, and we talked about how how melanin is for our being compassionate, and how God, how our Creator made sure that all of us have melanin, because melanin is the key to life. When we talk about melanin, let's say that we begin to see the attitude of those of the Caucasian began to change in regards to how people are being treated. What does that mean? The melanin, the melanin is less, it's less melanin in the Caucasian than it is in the African. That melanin becomes the point of communication, for lack of a better term, a phrase. What I mean by that is the point of contact. That may be a better way of putting it. When the communication of the soul is engaged, it is through that melanin, regardless of the amount or level or however you want to term it, that's there. If you are open to hearing, that is what's communicated with. It is. It sounds kind of sounds crazy, but that's the point of contact for communicating empathy, for communicating emotions, for having opportunity to change. If indeed you embrace what you're hearing. Does that make sense, or can someone say it better than I hope so anyway? If you understand what I'm making an effort to say about melanin.
Pastor.
Yes.
Good morning. This is Kathy. That is making sense to me, because that was going to be my question today, because you used the term melanation yesterday, and the melanation of a nation and of the world. And my question today was based on the conversation that we had yesterday. Exactly how does that take place? And we talked about the attitude of the Caucasian, and we used the example of the family that was involved in the mass murder in Rock Hill, and the family members' response to that was from a place of balance and was from a place of loving kindness, and what we would call from a place of being melanated. And so that was going to be my question today, is based on the fact that everyone has melanin in them, some races more than others. And I think what we see, the push that we are seeing from government right now and from society right now, is the attitude of trying to stop the browning of America. But it's not about browning of skin per se, even though that is twofold. That may be taking place in the physical, but the spiritual browning of America, the melanation that we're speaking of, that's what I think you just explained, because I've been wondering, how does this attitude occur? And I'm hearing you say, if I'm hearing you correctly, we're putting that in the macro, and now that is resonating on the inside of them, instead of ramping up hatred and more killings and more violence and this wrong attitude. It is about a spiritual concept and a spiritual attitude that is really the melanation of a nation that we're seeing take place right now. Am I seeing that the right way?
Yes. Let's say that family of what you spoke yesterday, who issued that message concerning the mass shooting in Rock Hill. Let's say that the author of that post was open to understanding what is it that I can do to mitigate the friction between the quote-unquote races in this country. And then this happened. The author's parents are killed and children are killed. And they are killed by an African male. And now it's like the author says, we have to put an end to this. How can I change this? That means that person is open Now, the words of forgiveness that were spoken in Charleston after the Charleston 9 were killed in that church, that energy touches the energy of the melanin in the author of that post, and now she begins to write, or he begins to write. And in the writing, the gist of the message is all of us are hurting, both families, the Adams as well as the family of those who were killed. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about the melanation of America in terms of the spiritual aspects of it. But there has to be a desire for change. And there is nothing that creates a greater desire for change than seeing the same thing play out over and over again, and realizing the amount of pain that it causes. Now, this is one of the things that I think we should pay close attention to, and that is this. For the most part, politicians and religious leadership are very insensitive to life itself. It sounds really crazy. You would think that those would be the two who would be the most sensitive to people, but they are not. They are only sensitive to power. The religious leadership is not going to do anything that's going to rock the boat, that's going to cause them to be out of favor with the government or with each other. And the same holds true. The government is not going to do anything that's going to rock the boat that cause them to be out of favor with religion or with the people with the money. So when change comes not from the top down, it comes from the bottom up. It comes from the people themselves. That is why community organizing is so effective. If you look at what happened with Jesus, change did not come from the priesthood, neither did it come from the governmental entities of Rome. Change started within the ranks of the people themselves. And the reason Jesus was killed is because of the fear of the religious leadership losing its power over the people. Keep in mind that it was the religious leadership who lied to the people and caused the people to rail against Jesus and to cry out for the freedom of Barabbas as opposed to that of Jesus. So the source of the antagonism towards the government has always been the people, but the mitigating force of that antagony has always been the religious leadership, be it in the African community or in the Caucasian community. The African community is always in the middle between the government and the people, because the African leadership in the religious sector wants to hold on to their power and what they call respect of the of governmental people. That's why they put councilmen in the pulpit and not you. The Caucasian is silent when it comes to the deadly events that are taking place in this nation and throughout the world, because they want to maintain their power as well. And they understand clearly that they are the support system for the separateness that exists between the races and other groups of people. So, having said that, I guess what I'm saying is that regardless of the color of the skin, religious leadership is the same thing. They do the same thing. They want the same thing. And what they want is power. And they see the power source that for them is being in good favor with the government, as opposed to making sure that the people they are supposed to be leading are taken care of and protected.
Man, does not that comment in the Bible, that word in the Bible, where Jesus talked about render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render, it is just so starkly vivid when you say that, and that's what part of so much of this imbalance is about. We are rendering more to Caesar than acknowledging and rendering to Boom, our Creator. So that's a root cause of so much, and it smacks of the fact that with the masses, the people, regardless of skin color, beginning to be open and aware of who they are as one because of this communication at the beyond the cellular level, at the spiritual level of the melanin type effect. It seems to me that there's only a matter of time that religion and politics and government and those with power, with money, will see the brunt of the people. And I don't mean that in terms of war, the way we think of war, but in terms of a spiritual war that brings to the forefront the fact that we're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to allow you to kill my brother, whoever my brother is. Because my brother is not just the same color as I am. We're not going to allow you to kill or to denigrate women, because women are part of who I am as well. So there's a reckoning that's beginning to occur, as has been said.
And we are at this day releasing the energy to bring about that reckoning by recognizing two things, or a few things, I should say, maybe. This is not, it just did start yesterday. Neither did it begin with slavery. When we think about who Jesus is and who Jesus was in bodily form, when we think about Jesus was a melanated man living under the thumb of a Caucasian government, when we really think about what happened to Jesus, we can see the same thing that happened to Emmett Till. Emmett Till was beaten beyond recognition. Rodney King was beaten beyond recognition. When both of those were beaten beyond recognition for no reason other than somebody lied, Jesus was arrested for sedition. The seditionist charge that was levied against Jesus came from the lips of the priest to the ear of the governor. When Jesus was arrested and interrogated, Jesus was found to be innocent. Jesus was found to be not guilty of all of the charges that were brought against him. I find no fault in this man. He has done nothing seditious, is what that means. Yet, that Caucasian, that Roman governor, allowed Jesus to be beaten beyond recognition simply because of the color of his skin. An innocent man, no different than an innocent Emmett Till or an innocent Rodney King being beaten beyond recognition for no reason other than the lie and the color of his skin. Jesus was crucified for no reason other than the color of his skin. If they were going to give the priest the opportunity to free one man, Barabbas or Jesus, and the other was going to be executed, why is it that they felt the need to beat him knowing that he had done nothing? Why didn't they just execute him? What that caused them, meaning those Romans, that those Caucasian men, to feel that they needed to beat him beyond recognition? What did they get out of it? What was going through their minds? What is it that gives them the idea that beating someone to that degree gives them more power? What is it? Is it an intimidation factor? Is there an intimidation factor involved there? Are they making an effort to send a message to everyone else that if you cross us, this is what you get, whether you're guilty or not? Why is it that they did that? What happened to Jesus is still happening today, and religious leaders will not address it that way. And Caucasian religious leaders won't, because they separate Jesus and the actions that were committed against him from the racial, what? Help me, someone. Attitudes of those who did it. They say that Jesus was God, but the men who are being beaten beyond recognition are not God. That's the separation. However, if you look at it truthfully, Jesus could not be 100% God and 100% man, because God can't die any more than we are. Jesus said that we could do what he did and even more. It's impossible for that to be true if we are not as Jesus is and as Jesus was. So this whole idea of racial tension is nothing new. It has been in existence ever since the Caucasian came in contact with the African and conquered him in war, because the African was not a warring group of people. This has always been the case. If you read the history of tribal warfare in Africa, you will find that they would choose one person from each tribe to fight the whole war, and whichever person lost, that whole tribe lost. That's how warfare was conducted. So that brings me to my next point: understanding that this idea that this what happened to Jesus is still happening today, just in more vivid and different ways. There are only two attitudes that exist on this earth, and that is the identities, rather, and that is the identity of the Caucasian and the identity of the indigenous people. The identity of indigenous people is connected to spirituality and the earth itself. The identity of the Caucasian is disconnected from spirituality, and it feels like it is its own God, its own creator, and it owns the world, literally. Every thought that we have is either a thought that is connected through the thought patterns of the Caucasian attitude or that of indigenous people. And there were those of you who are probably thinking that this is racial in nature. No, it is not. The Caucasian made it racial. This is an attitude, an identity of righteousness or unrighteousness, period. There is no such thing as spiritual unrighteousness. There is only spiritual righteousness. Anything that is spiritual cannot be ended, cannot be destroyed. Anything that is spiritual is always in existence, and it cannot be overcome. Righteousness cannot be defeated. Unrighteousness can. Unrighteousness is the attitude of the material world. It's earth consciousness that is devoid of spiritual essence. It is a consciousness that seeks to separate itself from the spiritual reality, everything that exists. And this type of attitude of unrighteousness has existed from the beginning. The beginning of what? The beginning of the material world. It is incumbent upon those who are traveling the pathway of righteousness, seeking the pathway of truth. It is incumbent upon them to bring to a halt the unrighteousness that has permeated the environment of this earth. And the way you bring that unrighteousness to an end is to make people aware of who they are. And when I say people, I mean the whole of humanity. Speaking to the melanated soul. Speaking to it about the unicity of humanity. Speaking to it about the unicity of this our spiritual essence. Our skin tones are different, but our souls are the same. And the loudest voice, the words rather, that can be spoken the loudest are not words at all. They are actions. And the actions are forgiveness, loving kindness, without regard to what has been perpetrated against you or what you think has been perpetrated against you. This forgiveness, this loving kindness is...
I'm sorry, Pastor. Say that one more time. That part about the forgiveness and the loving kindness is the sort of like a key to what we were just talking about.
The righteousness is being expressive of loving kindness and forgiveness without regard to what someone has perpetrated against you or what you think they have. It has nothing to do with getting even with anyone, seeking revenge. That's the spiritual righteousness. There is no spiritual unrighteousness. It's only earth consciousness that's the thought of humans towards other humans, the actions of others towards other humans is the unrighteousness, and that's not spiritual, that's material, and that is the reason it can be brought to an end. Does that cover it, Barbara?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. So, we have to make an effort to move in a direction that a direction where our desire overshadows what we have been taught acceptance is. If I move in a certain neighborhood, they will accept me. If I get an education, maybe I'll be accepted. If I work harder, maybe they'll embrace me. Maybe they'll let me in the club if I make enough money, if I drive the right car. We don't need acceptance from the Caucasian or anyone else. What we need is to have a desire for change. And that change that we desire is a change for righteousness' sake.
I have a comment that relates to what you just said about righteousness, and it relates to forgiveness and loving kindness. We always talk about balance, and balance, again, is not about having the same, but it seems then, it doesn't seem. What it says to me is that forgiveness and loving kindness will always balance things in our universe. Regardless of the infractions, regardless of what we saw as infractions, forgiveness and loving kindness is what balances. It doesn't matter how many rocks are on the side of the scale that talks about power or lust or pride or ego or money. Forgiveness and loving kindness in the other part of the scale will always balance that. And when there's balance, there's that opportunity for those things to change.
Yes. Any other comments or questions about that?
Pastor,
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, I agree with everything that's being said. And I'm thinking about the conversation that we had even on yesterday, and looking at when you don't recognize who you are, you take on someone else's identity. And learning to frame everything that we see happening around us, everything in the world that's going on, we have to see it from a point of it being spiritual. Because I have heard preachers preach, I am a natural man having a supernatural experience. That is not true. I'm a spiritual being having spiritual experiences through everything that I see, everything that I encounter daily. Once I learn to frame things in that manner, I can now look at things through the eyes of compassion, understanding that I am a melanated being. And as a result of that, it is easier, as Barbara was just saying, for me to bring balance to that situation, because I will not let my emotions and my ego and all of these other things, I'm not saying I'm not going to have an emotional reaction. I'm not going to say that things that I see are not going to hurt me or cause me to have some distress. But I don't stay in that place, because I see the bigger picture as the melanated person, the melanated being, let me say it that way. It is my role. These things are happening for me to maintain balance and to bring about balance and to bring about the concept and the mindset of melanation to all that I encounter. And when I see every experience as being a spiritual experience, and I recognize who I am, I no longer seek to be validated or to get my validation or acceptance from a different concept of unrighteousness, because those things cease to matter, and I recognize who I am, and I can stay balanced in doing what I'm supposed to do as the melanated man in the earth, who is to bring about peace and harmony. So I think I just wanted to add that, because no longer are we seeking validation or our identity from external sources. We recognize everything is internal, and we remain balanced from a place of being the spirituality that we are, and recognizing who we are internally and not wavering from who we know ourselves to be, if that makes sense.
It does. Anyone else?
Yeah, Pastor Richard and everyone, in reference to what, Kathy just said, we all are melanated, spirit beings. And my question is, we have the power to be able to produce melanin. Is that correct?
Yes.
And if we are, and we do have the power to create, then that's where, again, we can change things, not so much in terms of what the systemic issues are, but at the same time, being able to produce melanin, that's the desire that we can change it, because we can produce it. for those who want to be righteous in terms of what we know the truth to be. So I want to just ask that question, can we produce melanin in that way that we can change the atmosphere? I'm done.
Absolutely. And that in itself, the production of it influences the atmosphere. However, limitations in production of it are limited by greed, anything that's deemed negative towards humanity, anything that is selfish mitigates the production. Let me say, one of the things that I want to bring out today about our relationship with Jesus and religious leadership. I was listening to something in the Klan when they light a cross. They say, we are not burning the cross. We're lighting the cross to remind everyone of the light of Christ. And as they take their torches and light the cross, they recite the light of Christ, the light of Christ. Now, and with that kind of attitude, knowing what they believe and knowing what they represent, how is it that they could even be allowed to be a part of a congregational leadership staff that professes to love humanity or to profess to be a follower of this melanated man called Jesus? How can we even pretend to embrace a group of people? Well, let me just be plain about it. How can we pretend to embrace evangelical Christians when they embrace the tenements of the Klan? How can we even pretend to allow them to be a part of an effort to bring about freedom for the whole of mankind? How can we pretend to even believe anything that they tell us about their efforts to bring unicity to humanity or to help us in an effort for civil rights, if nothing else? How can we even pretend to believe that? And to carry it a step further, how can we find any solace in African religious leadership who find their comfort with those who support the attitudes that the Klan presents to us? What am I saying? How can we find any comfort in following a leader or the type of leadership who finds themselves aligned with evangelical Christianity, knowing that these are the same people who went into that Capitol and are being supported by their religious leadership? How can we find ourselves aligned with that? How can we see our leadership aligned with that, sharing services at Easter and Christmas and doing all of these things, quote unquote, together? And yet we are supporting them. That is no different than supporting your own demise. That is no different than rendering a tithe to a religious leadership that is working against you as a human and denying you as being spirit being. I don't understand how that can be, or how we can allow that to continue, I should say. We have to change this identity that we have embraced, or that so many have embraced, this identity that we have been given from a religious perspective, because identity is not about your skin color or the family you came from. Identity is about the concept that you profess to believe and the things things that you profess to believe are more reflected in how you live your life. When I speak of Caucasian and indigenous identity, Caucasian identity has nothing to do with whether somebody is pink or not, or white. It has nothing to do with that at all. Indigenous identity is not the color of the skin, it's the concepts. The Caucasian concepts are those of domination, enslavement, and genocide, greed, the robbery of resources. That's their attitude. The indigenous concept is about peace and harmony, loving kindness. That's the indigenous concept. You cannot have an indigenous concept and support the Caucasian concept of greed at the same time. You have to make a decision. There are no gray areas when it comes to spirituality versus hatred. There are no gray areas when it comes to righteousness and unrighteousness. Either you are going to travel the path of righteousness or you're not. Once you make that decision to travel the path of righteousness, yes, you're going to find yourself in the midst of unrighteousness and having unrighteous thoughts and some unrighteous actions until you work your way through that. And the reason that is so is because we, for generations, have been steeped in unrighteousness. For generations, we have been steeped in religious antics that has no spiritual overtones at all. It is through these antics we have to travel in order for us to get to the place where we can be the personification of righteousness. And the personification of righteousness does not raise itself above anyone, but it becomes the burden bearer for everyone. The personification of righteousness does not see itself as being superior at all. It sees itself as being the servant of all. So these are the things that we have to keep in mind if we are to continue to travel this journey, this journey that leads all of us to a place of balance. And all of us are inclusive of the Marjorie Greens of this world, as well as the Trumps of this world. Does that make sense to you? Any questions or comments about that?
That resonates with me.
I have a question, though, or maybe not a question, but trying to reach out and make sure I understand something. There's something you said about forgiveness and loving kindness kind of took my mind away on looking at something else. And this is not a matter of fact thing I'm saying it from a place of discussion and trying to gain some understanding. Looking at melanin, I think what I see and what I think I understood you to say, and I see in my own words, is, see in my own way rather, melanin is not a substance. That substance is a manifestation of man becoming human. The true melanin is the embracing of forgiveness and loving kindness. And that has no measurements. The embracing of that opens the doors and leads you to a oneness, not only with the Creator, but a oneness with all of mankind. And I say it has no measurements because when man decided to make himself human is when I think the measurements were seen through the pineal gland and making of this substance. But that is just the physical manifestation of the spiritual concept of what melanin is. So if that were not the case, then the family in Rock Hill, and I don't know if Kathy said this or not, but I would be surprised if the person that put that post out was not a female. But if that is the case, her levels of melanin in her body would be astronomical, considering that you not only lost children, but you lost parents. And in less than a day, your heart has moved to that place. So I see this as has been said, as something spiritual, and I think for lack of a better way of saying it, it's something we could see and measure because we are human. We've developed ourselves into being human. And the example of we have to be something that is seen. The closest example I could think of was when God gave them bread, and they had to relate it to something. They could not see the spiritual concept. It did not register with them. And so they had to find something that resembled it. And so not knowing that your thoughts and you can create this to be what you want. So that alone should have shown them the creativity that they had and the spiritual concept of this thing. But they said, we will call this manna because it reminds us of something else, instead of seeing it for the spiritual essence that it was. And if you notice throughout that dialogue, God never called it manna. He called it bread. So likewise with this, the spiritual essence of this is far greater than what the body produces and that we can see and measure. It is something that is gets its ingredients and its energy from forgiveness and loving kindness. Is that pretty much, that's how I see it. That's how I kind of sum it up. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody. If not, ask me a question.
It does to me, Ron, because as it's melanin are the primary controllers of human life itself, and so take that from the human to the spiritual level. Melanin allows us to be more in contact with our inner self, and allows the body to be in contact with life. So that means that the higher the melanin, the more contact with the emotions, the spiritual, the subconscious, extrasensory, the things that are not things that you can, that things that are not tangible, things that you can't hold in your hand, things that you can't see necessarily. So the spiritual aspect of melanin is what allows that. So I agree with what you just said, to that extent.
In other words, the way we look at it, and if you're not careful how you explain it and people understand it, it looks like this dosage of this measurement, a certain measurement causes you to be this way or that way. I was looking at something, I was reading something rather, on this guy who did not know he was a psychopath, and he took these tests, and he was a scientist at the time, and how amazed he was at this. And then it looked at what he was looking at his brain, and so I look at this with melanin. I can look at that woman in Rock Hill and say that she has 1/5 of the melanin that I have in my body, but look at the compassion that she showed. So in our explanations, I don't want it to sound like that there is a certain measurement of this that gives you that. I think that has been developed as we have become human, and that is the case, but on a spiritual level, it is not the case. And I don't want to confuse anybody by making statements like that. I know sometimes I can be a little confusing.
Another way to say that is how much forgiveness is enough forgiveness. how much forgiveness is too much forgiveness.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And I hope that didn't take us in a different place.
Well, Ron, this
I
is
have a
Audrey. Good
question.
morning.
Good morning, Audrey and Evelyn.
I spoke first,
Good
Evelyn.
morning,
Who's
BJ.
gonna-
Oh, go ahead, baby. It doesn't matter. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Evelyn yields.
Well, Ron, I'm going to the left field. So,
Okay.
been really trying to process this in my head, and I don't know if I've really processed it or not. But what I feel like is that melanin is both a spiritual and a physical thing. In terms of the physical thing, and they both interact. But in terms of the physical thing, what I believe is that melanin was originally designed, and it does this physiologically. It absorbs sound, and I would use a different word in place of sound as vibration. It absorbs vibration. So that when it absorbs vibration, man in his early state, in terms of him being a spiritual being, would absorb the vibration of the universe, which was his connection to the Creator. And man, as a physical being, he absorbs the vibration that connects him to the universe. But depending on his physical setting and surroundings, I believe it can go either way. He can absorb what's in his physical world and surroundings, and that becomes traumatizing in terms of what we experience every day in our quote unquote country. So when we absorb all of that chaos that's going on, it becomes traumatizing. And because we have lost our identity in terms of who we are as a spiritual being, the trauma wins out. But if we can realize and get to a place of knowing who we are, then melanin has a mitigating effect in terms of physiologically, because we have it in our inner ear, we have it in our pineal gland, we have it in our major organs, because it absorbs some of that vibration. It can mitigate any kind of damage to those organs, to your physical person. That is, if you're in a place where you're not accepting everything as trauma. So I think because of that mitigating effect, and because of, if you're in a spiritual place, you can take all of that and turn it around as forgiveness and loving kindness. And okay, that's as far as I've gotten in my processing.
Well, I agree with it. I don't think you're in left field at all. I agree with you 100%. What I wasn't prepared to say, because I don't quite understand it yet, all of it, I think man is the one who manifest himself into a physical being. And that part of the process I don't understand. And the melanin then showed its effect on that human based on the amount of loving kindness as we've discussed, or everything everybody's discussed. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but how I see it is the spiritual part of it came first. It is a lack of a better term, a spiritual substance that was birthed through loving kindness and through forgiveness, and the physical manifestation of it shows up in your organs as man made himself into a human. That's kind of, and you helped me kind of see that and explain it a little better. I think we kind of see it the same way. We just maybe I did a poor job of explaining it. Which I do sometimes.
I do believe the spiritual part came first, and it was a way to connect to the rhythm of the universe and the Creator.
But that would speak to melanin itself. What am I saying? If the spiritual did come first, therefore, the manifestation of a human in the earth, the first human would have had more melanin in it because of the close connection it had with the universe that produced it.
Yes,
and
I agree.
As other humans began to manifest in the earth, then that became lessened as exponentially so. So when God spoke of the manna as bread only, God was speaking about a physical manifestation of that which sustains life. When the element melanin is a physical manifestation of that which maintains the vibration or the rhythm between the human and the universe. Does that make sense? So we're not talking about measurements as much as we're talking about the exponentially phases of it from human evolution. Ron?
Yes, sir. I agree with you. I agree. I use that because I couldn't think of another. We are a people. The human has to see something. He has to have a measurement. He has to have something that he can compare with. He has to have something that fits into his mind, and that's where I think manifestation in the physical came from. So that's why I was trying to search for something.
And I don't want us to get too technical with it either, you know?
But as always, what the human does is try to fit it into his own mind, and that in itself begins to limit it, because the confines of our minds are only so open. Evelyn.
That's kind of where the trauma comes from too.
And the schizophrenia and all that other stuff.
I was just going to say or ask, with all the discussions that we have and the dialogue, are we bringing balance to the atom?
We are the balance. And we are the Adam. We are a physical manifestation of Adam. And we are the balance.
Can you give me a little bit more on that, please?
If the more we become aware of who we are, and the more we adhere to the teachings that we receive from the prophets, Jesus, etc., the more balance we are manifest in the earth. And let me give you an example. Yesterday, we were I made mention of the American First Caucus that was for to keep America that said that America is an Anglo-Saxon nation. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about those are the kind of things that we have to mitigate. Well, overnight, Marjorie Greene said that they're not going to launch that caucus at all. It ended. So what happened? Was it going to happen anyway, or did that manifest because it was our desire for it to remain where it was, just a thought and nothing else? What happened? That in itself is what brings balance. The balance comes when things that create imbalance are mitigated or brought to an end. When we change the attitude that men have towards females, that brings balance. So when I say we are the balance, I'm saying that we are the ones who brings balance to the earth based upon whether or not we are balanced. If I say that we are to we need to bring balance to we need to change the attitude that this world has towards females, but at the same time, I maintain an attitude of misogyny, nothing happens because I'm not balanced myself. However, if I really believe what I am saying and my belief in it is shown by the way I live my life in relationship to females, then we begin to see the energy and the balance come into play. Does that make sense? And somebody who understands what I'm saying, please explain it better than I did. Because I'm like,
I think you did fine, Pastor, because it reminded me that's why our thoughts and our words have to, our thoughts and our words have to be in sync. And righteous thoughts and words that are in sync with the universe are what create the change, or what create whatever the desire is. The righteous thoughts for the benefit of mankind are what creates that difference and that change in terms of physical manifestation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're quite welcome, ma'am. Anyone else?
Other questions? Yeah.
Yes, this is Angela. I got a question. Well, I got a comment and a question. We was referring to the talking about the attitudes of the Caucasian. I think if they see that the minority, the black race, and the other races are not a threat, that we're connected, more so, but they see us as a threat. So in essence, if you see somebody as a threat, then you're always going to be in that attack mode. So I think that has to change, that we are not a threat. We're supposed to, love one another. And we were created, as you said, we was created from the same source. Well, we come from the same source. So we really truly believe that we was created from the Creator, and if we truly believe in God, then it has to change. And the other thing I was going to say, my question was, when it comes to the Caucasian woman, the attitude of the Caucasian woman, I say, that attitude has played a role in a lot of, as we talk about manipulation and lies. I know the Klansman has a part, but it's something about the female aspect of that attitude. I really can't explain it, but I know what I'm saying as far as the how a lot of, well, I'm just gonna say a lot of African Americans have lost life in the lie of it's just take okay, what I'm saying. I'm not trying to confuse anybody, I'm trying to figure out what I'm saying. It takes a lie. Once that lie is spreaded, if you see this as this way that the African American is it's a threat, and the Caucasian attitude is speaking up and saying, yeah, this is a threat, then you're gonna treat it like a threat. But I ain't trying to babble. I don't know if somebody kind of hit me what I'm saying, but I know it's something about the Caucasian attitude of the woman. It's more outspoken in the Caucasian, and a lot of the influences is the attitude of the Caucasian woman.
Let me see if I can help you answer. First of all, when you talk about the perception of a threat, right? That's the same as saying that it is our fault that what happened to us is taking place. It is not up to us to change the Caucasian perception about us being a threat. We have never, ever presented ourselves as a threat. They have taught themselves and each other that we are a threat. When someone attacks you and you defend yourself, you are considered a threat. When they are the perpetrators who is actually the threat. Example, if a white female speaks her mind, she is being assertive. If a black female speaks her mind, she's the angry black woman. Who is the one who makes those determinations? It is the Caucasian male who makes those determinations. And in that mind of that Caucasian male, he is selling the fact that this black woman is a threat to you. That's the perpetration of the lie. It is not up to me to stop them from lying. We have believed for too long that if we act like they act, if we give them what they request of us by way of taking on their identity, then they will accept us more because we're acting like them. No matter what happens with us in relationship to the Caucasian attitude about us, it does not change anything. It matters not how light and bright you are, how straight your hair is, how much money you have in the bank, what neighborhood you live in, or what kind of car you drive, or the amount of education you have. You are still perceived to be a threat by them because that's how they control the mind of the African as well as the mind of their own people. As far as the white woman is concerned, the white woman has been a pawn in this game forever and a day. The white woman has been used as an excuse to do harm to African males. And the white woman has been put on a pedestal that she does not deserve. And that pedestal of white privilege that she sits on is a knife that's in the back of the African woman and the African male. This is done in order to keep the mindset of racism intact. When we understand that the white woman was more brutal as a slave mistress than the slave master was, and that the white woman was responsible for more lynchings than any other thing that we can conceive. When we understand that, then we begin to see that the white woman in the mind of the white male is not a myth. He knows what she is. And that's the reason he treats her the way he does. It is not our responsibility, I repeat, to make anybody change their minds about us. We did not create racism. We did not create slavery. We did not create this myth of the innocent white woman. We did not create this myth of the ignorance of the African. We didn't even create the myth of Christianity. None of that. So why is it that we are the ones who have to dance to their music in order to be accepted by them? What we have to do is accept ourselves for who we are. And when we accept ourselves for who we are, it is at that juncture that we began to see that we are indeed Elohim, and we should never, ever be ashamed of that. We should never be ashamed of our thick lips. We should never be ashamed of our wide nose, big butts, and kinky hair. We should never be ashamed of that, because that's how we are manifested in this world in a physical way. But that is not who we are. That's how we are manifested. Who we are is Elohim, and that we should not be ashamed of. I am not ashamed of being an African male. As a matter of fact, I don't want to be anything else. I don't have any desires to be anything except who I was created to be. Has it always been like that with me? No, it has not. When I was a little boy, I was darker than my siblings, and they always agitated me about that. They picked at me about that until one day, I guess I was about 7 years old, maybe I was really young, and my first cousin said to me, she was much older than I, and she said, James, you chocolate. Got a pretty smile, and women love that. And from that day forward, I was never, ever ashamed of who I am and what I look like. We have to get past that image thing and understand that if we are ugly because of our thick lips, then we have a creator who is unjust. Maybe the ugliness is no lips. Maybe the thing that is not acceptable is blonde hair and blue eyes. Maybe that is the anomaly, as opposed to the adverse of that, or the inverse of that, I should say. Maybe that's it. Who knows? I don't care. All I care about is loving kindness and forgiveness, and not trying to make any philosophical argument, not making any attempt to make any religious moves to justify who I am as versus who someone else say I am. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Pastor.
No. Before we end, I just wanted to address this Johnson & Johnson thing. Someone that raised that question. That's all.
Angela, where are you at in terms of your question?
Oh, that summed it up.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Okay,
Yeah.
Pastor.
Are there any other questions or comments, Papa G?
No, I was going to say go ahead and do your J&J.
When it comes to Johnson & Johnson, honestly, my feelings are that it's going to be pulled off the market. And the reason I say that is because, number one, it's going to be extremely difficult to get anyone to take it again. Number two, if there was any clue that this was a fluke, it never would have been pulled off, it would never been stopped anyway. There would not have been a pause. They know something is deadly wrong with this injection. The third thing, one of my daughters, when Johnson & Johnson first hit the market, when they first approved it, I received a text from one of my daughters saying, I bet you they're going to push this into the black communities and to poor white people because it's one injection, and then we're going to find out that they did not thoroughly test it the way they should have. And when they paused it, I got a text from that same daughter saying to me, God, I hate to be right. So all I'm saying is this. If you can avoid J&J, avoid it. Because honestly, that's the one that they pushed into Africa and other countries of color. And look at where we are with it. I do not believe that anyone, whether they be African or Caucasian, is going to want that injection if they ever start it again. And I hope that response is what will help you to see the person who actually sent me this question. Okay, I hope that answers your question. I should say.
Reverend Richard.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Richard. This is Kathy. See, Kathy. I know some people that actually got that vaccine on Friday, and I had talked to them prior to it. I told them, I can't tell them what to do, but I can suggest what they do is make another appointment with another store and get the vaccine. But because his wife had made the appointment, he went on and got it anyway. I think him, his wife, and his mother-in-law, all three of them got it on Friday.
Well, he may
and the only reason they wanted to get it was because his wife made the appointment. He hadn't even heard anything about. He don't watch TV, so he hadn't even heard anything about it until I mentioned it to him.
And see, Kat, this is the other part of that. It was supposed to be on pause anyway, right?
Right.
So why are they still giving it? What would make them continue? You see what I'm talking about?
Right.
It's already enough distrust in this government, especially in business. So why is it that they did not pause it on a state level when they did it federally? Why would Johnson & Johnson allow them to give injections? Because they can stop it, period. That's the problem with this country. When people begin to express their reluctance, and you do something like this, that makes it even worse. If they had stopped it nationwide, then that would instill more confidence. When you see a problem, you're going to correct it. But now it's supposed to be paused, and you still give it injections. That does not instill confidence in anybody. So the best thing that we can do is to take authority over this whole vaccine thing in terms, reassert our authority, rather, especially in this area where these people are being injected with something that they are not sure of, so that they will not be adversely affected by it. Our desire is that it will be more effective than they thought it would be and will not affect them in a physically adverse manner. That has to be our desire. Any questions or comments about that?
Question, or rather, question, comment. I was going to ask, even though they've stopped it, but I was going to say, well, what about the mitigating effect of melanin? Protecting against any adverse effect and letting it do what it's supposed to do.
And that's the reassertion that I'm advocating.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course, I wasn't thinking about the mitigation of it by melanin, but that's a great point.
So let it be.
Okay. Barbara Jean?
Any other comments? Other questions? Sounds like a good place to pause.
That's, I guess, just
Okay,
another comment.
Go ahead.
You know, based on what Audra just said and Pastor's follow-up, that is an excellent way to end because it tells us that nothing can overwhelm us. Nothing that we see, nothing that can happen, even the things that make you pause and make you take a deep breath, nothing out there can overwhelm us. And that we're on the right track, we're on the right journey, and we're armed with what we're supposed to be armed with to take care of mankind. That's it.
Thank you, Ron. Nice summary for everything we said. Anything else for the good of the body? Okay, doke. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. And thank you for the questions, Pastor. Thank you. And thank you for the comments, everyone.
Thank you.
Good day as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.